So that is the official Get to Know Drew. He knows what's coming. The Pastors, Priests, and Guides introduction of Drew is Drew Jackson is what happens when you combine the poetry of Kendrick Lamar with the contemplative stance of Richard Rohr with the prophetic fire of Howard Thurman. So Drew, thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks, Aaron. Thanks, Aaron.
Have you gotten used to that intro yet, or is it still
yeah, you know what? I just accept it. It is. It just is.
You don't even fight it. You just, okay.
Yeah.
Well, Drew, all 4 of these first retreats, we began with an opening liturgy and a practice that helps us arrive. And then the very first offering is your teaching on living the mystery, on beginning with the unknowing. And so I wanted to begin there. Why is it so important to begin with the questions rather than demand the answers?
I mean, where else can you begin? Where else can you begin but question? It's the only thing that opens us rather than closes us down. Right?
Yeah.
When we come in armed with answers, armed with certitude, it's a way of communicating that we're closed down, right? That there is no room for more. There's no room for expansion. And I think that's really the opposite, the antithesis of what the spiritual journey is meant to be. And we talk about this a lot at the retreat, right? How for many of us, and I know speaking for myself, the things that we were given in terms of this faith journey along the way is that we have to come to a place of certitude, that's actually what this life of faith is all about.
Yeah, that's the goal.
That's the goal.
Yeah.
It's the goal. It's like, you got to know, you got to be certain, that's what belief is.
Yeah.
But when I consider Jesus, I consider Jesus's way. You look at how he's constantly just offering more questions than giving easy answers, and how the questions become the gateway to more questions, deeper questions. But it's within those questions that somehow transformation is happening.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think that's where we begin as an invitation for people who are, coming with lots of different things they're holding and maybe haven't had the space, been with the people, or had the permission to hold the questions, to wrestle with them, to ask them in an honest way.
Yeah.
And so we really just want to set that space and say, bring all of you, including the questions that you're wrestling with and holding. Not guaranteeing that you're going to walk away with an answer. But you might find something of God, something of yourself in the midst of the wrestling.
Yeah. Wow. Why do we resist this so profoundly?
Yeah, I mean, because answers are easier.
Yeah.
It's to sit in mystery, like, that's not, it's not fun.
Yeah.
It's not it's not fun. But I think in a sense, that's the journey. That is the invitation of the spiritual journey. It's like to free fall into the largeness of God. Right.
Wow.
And so that's why questions are given, because questions keep falling.
Yeah.
Keep falling more deeply into this love, and love will catch you.
Yeah.
Like, trust that love will catch you.
Yeah. On the retreat, you share a quote where Father Rohr asks, does that mean God is unknowable?
Yeah. He says, to say that God is mystery is not to say that God is unknowable. It's to say that God is infinitely knowable. Infinitely knowable. I mean, even just sitting in that, like sit with those words for a while. The infinite knowability of God.
Yeah.
You never, there's never coming to an end of our knowing of who God is, of the divine, of the experience of divine love. There's never coming to an end of it.
Wow.
That's mind blowing to me.
That's mind blowing. So, Drew, I know this is both dear to your heart and ministry, and through you has become so central and dear to our pastors, priests, and guides community. What is the role of poetry in beginning with questions, in unknowing? Talk to me a little bit about the need for poetry in days like these.
I have to start with the quote from Rilke that I bring into every one of our pastors, priests, and guides, where in his book Letters to a Young Poet, he writes to a young poet named Franz Kappas, and this young poet has lots of questions for him about writing, about poetry, about life, about love, about all of these things, and he's looking for answers. And what Rilke says back to him is he invites him into this stance of living the questions and loving the questions. And he says, be patient toward everything that is still unresolved in your heart. Learn to love the questions themselves, right? Like locked rooms, like this foreign language, something to be explored. Love the questions. And he said, you have to learn to live the questions, because that's the key. The key is to live everything, right? And then maybe some distant day you will live your way into the answer, right? And I love that he says maybe you'll live your way some distant day into the answer. It's not even you'll get there at some point. And so I think that, to me, there's a reason that is his advice to a young poet, to love the questions and to live the questions. Because there's something about poetry that is not designed, it's not designed to lead you to this one clear answer, which might be one of the reasons why a lot of us we stay away from poetry, or we don't like it. We feel like we don't like it, or we don't, because it feels sometimes like, just tell me what you want to tell me. Just say the thing.
Yeah, right.
Just get there.
Yep.
And so I think that is the gift of poetry, and also the frustration of poetry.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
It's not meant for a fast reading. There's a slowness to it. And it's bringing us into a sort of attentiveness, into an attention to even the questions that our own soul's asking. So it's like, as the poem is asking questions of us, what it's really doing is saying, pay attention to the questions that your own soul is asking.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
What's going on underneath the surface of your own life?
Yeah.
Why are you bringing this question to this poem?
Yeah.
Why is this emotion coming up as you read this? Why are you resisting this? Why? So that's what the poem. If the poem is doing that, it's doing its work.
Yeah, right. It's not just trying to deposit ideas into you, although ideas can come through, I suppose.
Yeah.
It's inviting us into like a process, like a thing that happens that's out of the control of the poem. Then
control. Being in control.
Yeah.
You know, this conversation around poetry and questions. It reminds me of the poem that I wrote. That I think I shared at one of our retreats in the past. But I wrote it. It's called Ascension, and I wrote it reflecting on the ascension, but also just kind of the entirety of, okay, what is this ministry of Jesus? What is Jesus actually inviting us into? And the poem opens with an epigraph from the poet Morgan Parker's poem, ! And she says, "We are the revolutionary poem! ! You don't have to go home, but this is only the start. The good part is what comes next." Ascension. And this is what poetry does. It carries us. It invites us into a story, unfinished, saying, write the next stanza. It gives us no plan, no blueprint for the future, but simply asks us to witness, take it in and declare what we have seen. It flies away, but does not leave. Its presence remains long after the page has been turned, long after the last word spoken. It leaves us with questions, gazing toward heaven for answers, but no answer descends. Its intent to get us to sit with the questions again. What do you hear when you hear that?